All right, welcome into SportsBIT Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy, Wednesday, March 30th. Big game breakdown going to be the Hawks and the Raptors and the Warriors on the road to take on the Jazz. And the deep dive today, 2 division previews, NL East and AL East. Of course, that play of the day, all that coming up. Teddy's got a good rant in a few minutes. We start with bad beats. How about the Cavs, lane 2, no LeBron, up 20 at home in the third quarter against Houston. They had won 66 games in a row when they had a 20-point lead. They blew it. They blew it big time. They came down in the fourth quarter and took long threes, horrible shots, and the Rockets rallied to get the win. You look at this graphic, LeBron has sat out twice in the last 2 weeks. They were outscored 30-15 against Dallas and 35-16 in the fourth quarter last night. Both games at home, a tough one if you had the Cavs out there, Teddy.
Yeah, sure. And it's, you're laying a point and a half with Cleveland. You got to be feeling pretty good when they're up 22 in the second half. Cleveland bettors, not happy this morning. Bad bets last night. What do we got? We got San Diego State. Wow. Pretty ugly showing for Steve Fisher's Aztecs in Madison Square Garden. They couldn't hit a shot, Paul.
They're never in the game. Never in the game. Total run-up. I give George Washington a lot of credit. They were really fired up going into this tournament. The big win at Monmouth and the Aztecs, you're right. They never had a shot, and we got a good championship game with Valpo and George Washington. Also, how about if you had the Nets, more bad bets? They lost to Orlando on the road, 139-105, so the Nets and the under. 2 bad decisions there. Now, we got some lineup hijinks here, Teddy. How about OKC?
Yeah, wild line moves here in Las Vegas, across the global betting marketplace. Once it was announced that Billy Donovan, late announcement, nobody really knew. All of a sudden, Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka, yeah, you guys are going to sit. Oklahoma City scored 82 points. They shot 38% from the floor. They had 19 turnovers. And in about a half an hour, this line went from +4 for the Pistons to -2. The markets crashed aside. The total barely moved, Paul. Of course, excuse me, without anyone to pass to, Russell Westbrook, 8 from 28 from the floor. Too many shots, not many assists.
This is going to continue, Teddy. You got to be careful now. That news came down kind of late. It wasn't like the LeBron announcement, so this is going to continue for the rest of the season. You be careful out there because a lot of guys from a lot of teams are going to sit.
That's the nature of the NBA. Come late March, and especially as we get into April, what you're going to see is very few overnight lines. You're going to see a lot more games move wildly as players are announced in or out. Never forget, the backups are NBA players too. And oftentimes, when a team isn't facing a superstar, there's just a natural tendency to let down a little bit. So this was a situation for OKC, second night of back-to-backs. One thing I'm not looking to do in the NBA at this time of the year, Paul, is be laying points with team on the road after they played the previous night. Teams tend to get a little bit gassed come late March and early April.
Man, what a gift for Detroit. They're trying to get that 8 seed and make the playoffs, and no Durant, no Ibaka certainly helped them in that one. Ask and you shall receive. Yesterday on my radio show, I talked to Nick Bogdanovich, Director of Trading with William Hill. He's going to put up a prop. Will an NBA team go undefeated for the entire season? Now, the 85-86 Celtics went 50-1. This is including the playoffs. They lost in the regular season of Portland. So we still have Golden State undefeated. We still have San Antonio undefeated. I have no idea what that price is going to be, Teddy. Probably a nice juicy takeback if it can happen. But hell, why not? Why not throw it up there? Will somebody beat the Warriors on the road this year?
And that's one of the things we like about Nick Bogdanovich. He's been a bookmaker here in Las Vegas. He was here when I got here, and I moved out here in '98. So he's been around for a long time. But put up some unique stuff, put up some interesting stuff. Don't just copy other people's numbers. Nick Bogdanovich, a sportsbook director that you and I both, Paulie, respect a fair bit.
And they were the first to put that will Kentucky go undefeated prop up a couple years ago back-to-back because people wanted it and said, hey, why not put it up there? And they did. Life's all about dealing with distractions and issues and handling adversity. Teddy, you had a tough run. You're out just having dinner Easter Sunday, and then all hell breaks loose.
Oh, yeah. So it starts out, and sometimes you got to rant about something to make you feel better. But the point of this is that life happens, and you got to deal with it. So I got Virginia on Sunday. So I'm watching Virginia, with my family over at a friend's house. We're having a little Easter dinner. I got the car parked out front. Everything's fine. Go outside. Well, first Virginia blows the lead. Then we go outside to leave. Oh, my car's not there. Oh, shit. There's a sign facing the other way. I didn't even see it. No parking here to curb. What are you going to do? So, but Easter Sunday, we're talking about like 6 o'clock on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
There's just a tow boy just driving around. It's like the Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson's the biggest a-hole in the world towing everybody's car. It's not like somebody called him. This guy's just driving around, cruising, looking to make money off of suckers like me. And, of course, they charge by the mile. They tow it to the other frickin' side of town, dude.
Oh.
It's like $400 to get my car out.
Oh.
Easter Sunday. With my family, I'm like, oh, dude, I had steam blowing out of my ears. So what happens? Really, I had steam blowing out of my ears. What happens the next day? I didn't win a freaking bet. What didn't I do the next day? I didn't bet big. I didn't go nuts. I knew that I was still in this mental state of just being, fuming. And, oh, by the way, my car, which hasn't never leaked oil, is now leaking oil.
Bingo.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, tow boy.
Bingo.
Enjoy your money. I was so pissed, Paul. But the key is be wary of making big bets when the focus might not be there. Life's going to happen. Life happens to handicappers. Life happens to all of you out there in viewer land. When something happens, hey, it's okay. Take it easy for a day or two or a week or as long as it takes until you can get your focus back where it needs to be.
That's also happened to two guys I know. How about the holding and the storage fees they charge? It's extortion.
You know what? I didn't even read the itemized bill. I don't know that I ever want to read the itemized bill, Paul.
And how the guy's just got to be right in the community. How he can get there in less than 2 minutes to tow the car.
This is what they do. They drive around. They're contracted out by the homeowners associations to tow people that are parked where they shouldn't be parked. So the HOA probably gets a cut.
Yeah.
And all the homeowners in there, therefore, get a break on their HOA fees when more cars get towed.
Jesus. Vicious.
Yeah, exactly.
Vicious.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, big game breakdown coming up, and then we'll get into the NL East, deep dive AL East, and the play of the day. Rapid fire coming up on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today. Welcome back on SportsBIT. Big game breakdown. 2 games coming up before we hit the NL East. Let's start with the Hawks and the Raptors on NBA TV. Raptors 200 the total. Now, it looks like Lowry and DeRozan are starting to wear down because they've been carrying the load all season for the Raptors. This is a revenge spot for Atlanta. They lost 104-96 March 10th in Toronto, a bad scheduling spot. They were just finishing up a 4-game roadie on the West Coast. But since that loss, Teddy, and I know we gave it to them pretty good because they came out of the break and they had some bad losses to Milwaukee and Miami at home. This Atlanta team is on a roll.
Oh, they sure are. Since losing at Toronto, straight up, 9-1 against the spread, 7-3, and they're covering the number by more than 6 points per game. But one of the things that I always do, I like to look at opposing coaches' quotes about the team they just played. Mm-hmm. And over this run, multiple opposing coaches have talked about how well Atlanta is playing and how locked in they are. Here's a quote from Stan Van Gundy after Atlanta just kicked the Pistons' ass in Detroit last Saturday, and they snapped, a 4-game winning streak. Yeah, the same Pistons team that just beat OKC tonight. Quote, "They played at a level we couldn't match. I thought it was more about them. I didn't come away from that game like I come from a lot, thinking that we weren't ready to play or we didn't try. I think we kept trying to hang in there. They just weren't good enough. And we've been talking all year, Paul, that Cleveland's vulnerable. Someone can beat Cleveland in the postseason. And for much of the season, I thought that Boston might be that team. Concerned about the Celtics' injuries, concerned about the Celtics' defense right now. Maybe Atlanta's that squad that's going to be good enough to knock off the Cavs. Let's not forget, these two teams met in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, but the Hawks riddled with injuries, weren't they, in that series, Paul?
Oh, it was terrible. You had Cephalosha knocked out by the NYPD.
Yeah, clocked.
Carroll got hurt. Corver was banged up, and they had nothing. The Cavs might have won the series anyways, but, Atlanta didn't stand a chance with all those injuries, and maybe that's where postseason experience played a role. But this team, sure. I'm not down on Boston yet because they get Crowder back, but I'm with you on Atlanta. They're really D'ing people up, and they play those Cavs coming up Friday at home. Game number 2, the Warriors and the Jazz. Golden State, 5.5, 205 on the road. Here's the graphic. Here's the previous meeting so far. November 30th, Golden State was laying 7.5. They won 106-103. December 23rd, Golden State was laying 14. They won 103-85. And March 9th, they were laying 14, and they won 115-94. Maybe they meet in the first round, although I doubt it. Utah's the 7th seed right now. They have an easy schedule the rest of the way. But still, because of pace, the Jazz are 30th in pace, but they really have issues scoring. And Teddy, the Jazz held Curry in check the last time they met. He only had 12 points in 31 minutes, and they still got blown out.
Yeah, that's a scary thing for Utah because Utah is a defensive-minded squad. And when you shut down Curry, you got to win that game, man. Or at least be competitive in that game. And the fact they got blown out certainly doesn't bode well for their chances of that potential first-round upset. But on the other hand, Utah then is not Utah now. Remember, their defensive low-post stud, Rudy Gobert, he missed 6 weeks early in the season, and it really took a while for the Jazz defense to come around once he got healthy again. But over the last 10 games, look at this defense, Paul. They are shutting teams down. 4 of their last 5 opponents have failed to reach 88. Only one got to the century mark. We talk about offensive options. Derek Favors is one of the most underrated players in the league. He really is. Hayward's not the only scorer on that team. And, of course, you have Rodney Hood, who's on quite a bit of a roll right now. 18 of 24 from the floor in his last 2 games, pouring in 45 points. He's a streaky shooter, and when he's hot, those are the games that Utah tends to put up points in bunches. When they do that, they've been covering numbers. And when he doesn't hit, look at all the unders this team's been cashing of late, Paul.
And if the Warriors win this game tonight, that's it. They're going to break the Bulls' record. They only have 2 road games left at Memphis and then San Antonio April 10th. And who knows what Popovich is going to do. So with all those home games still to play, and they still can have 2 losses and still break the Bulls' record, they win tonight, lock it up. They'll break the Bulls' record and have that historic season. To the NL East, we start with the Mets, baby. 90 wins last year. They go to the World Series. We talked about, though, on the other show, earlier in the week, though, that you didn't make a killing on the Mets because of that great staff that they have. Well, you're going to be laying $2 in most of these games, and I'm worried about Cespedes. He got paid. He's showing up with a different car every day in spring training, for crying out loud. They also lost Murphy to the Nationals, but when you look at this picture, can you really spot a flaw in these aces that the Mets are going to be running out there every day?
No, I mean, Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Mets. The problem with the Mets is, again, a 90-win team last year, not a squad that had been in the postseason in any previous recent season, and you made a couple of bucks with them. This year, if the Mets win 90 games, you'll lose money with them because, as you mentioned, you're going to lay $2 every time. The game after game after game. So there's really hard. I don't think there's a good chance that you're going to make money with the Mets in the aggregate this year, unless they win 110 games or something like that. But, we look at this lineup, I'm saying, yeah, the Mets can't hit, You start to look up and down, if healthy, Granderson, Cespedes, Wright, Duda, d'Arnaud, Neil Walker coming over, maybe they could score a few runs. And if they could score a few runs and you can start to lay some of these prices, instead of laying $2, you're laying $1.10 on the run line or something like that, maybe there's some chance to make some money with New York.
And they also get Wheeler back, too, just what the Mets need, another arm, right? The Nationals, a disaster last year, 83 wins. I had a couple of professional bettors tell me, lay the huge price for the Nationals to win the division. It was a joke. Many picked them to go to the World Series. Dusty Baker, an upgrade over Matt Williams. Yes, I don't know how much. Baker's still stuck in the 80s with the sacrifice bunt. But they pick up Ben Revere. As I mentioned, they got Murphy from the Mets. We'll find out this year. What is Harper really capable of doing? What's that ceiling like? Can a guy hit 50 home runs? Can he really take off and dominate baseball?
Dusty Baker is not an upgrade over any MLB manager.
Oh, Matt Williams was so bad, though.
Think about how much talent Dusty Baker has had on his teams. The Giants, boom, they handed him the keys to the best team in baseball. The Cubs handed him the keys to the best team, one of the better teams in baseball. Certainly one of the best starting staff in baseball at that time. The Reds, that team was loaded What did Dusty Baker do? Underachieve, fail in the playoffs, play exactly 1970s baseball in 2000, in the 2000s. No. Dusty Baker, whew, not an upgrade over any manager, period. But, you have two aces, Strasburg and Scherzer. They're going to be priced again, like the Mets aces. Hard to make money with those guys, even when they win. I shouldn't say even when they win. You make money every time they win. But, even if they have a winning record in their games, if the Nats are 18-12 and 30 starts from Scherzer, you're not making money on Max Scherzer this year. That's what I meant. But the back end of this rotation, man, has a lot to prove, Paul.
To the Marlins, 71-91 last year. Good pitching staff. Could get to 500 this year. Can Fernandez and Stanton stay healthy? They haven't played a full season together. But please, Teddy, I don't want to bet on Don Mattingly.
Yeah. You think about Mattingly, and we think about how hard in some ways it is to bet Miami overs, given their repeated history of A, slow starts, and B, midseason salary dumps. That being said, this is the year that things are supposed to come together for the Marlins. You know how good their ace is. You know how good their slugger is. There's a lot of young talent all over this team. And I really liked their chemistry last year with Stanton as a legit superstar leader. There are lots of very bad teams in the National League for teams like Miami that are supposed to be mediocre to beat up. Worth noting, 79.5 at Westgate here in Las Vegas, 80.5 at Cantor. And, that means whichever side you want, there's an opportunity to get, quote-unquote, the best of the number.
All right, the Atlanta Braves, just like the Cubs and the Astros, they're going to bottom out and rebuild. They're not trying this year. The question is Freeman going to have anything to hit, any protection in that lineup?
Well, look, they were dead last in runs scored last year. They were dead last in home runs, and they're by wide margins, So there's no place to go but up in that regard. And, of course, Freeman, he had, 118 games last year with a wrist injury, and he was really less than 100% throughout the entire second half of that season. Now, there's not a lot to like about this lineup. There's not a lot to like about this pitching staff. They're in complete rebuild mode. But let me make this clear. Some very bad NL team is going to finish 500. Remember the Twins last year? They were supposed to be god-awful.
Sure.
They went 1-6 the first week of the season. They got outscored 45-13. And then they went 48-34 into the All-Star break over their next 82 games and made a fortune for everyone who was backing them. Plus price cast after plus price cast. The markets didn't believe what they see, and they're not going to respect non-metric pitchers. So could the Braves be that team? Maybe. It's not about the first week or even the first month of the season. You find a team that everyone thinks is going to be super crappy. They play 500 baseball for a month. You make money with that squad. They play 500 baseball for a half of a season. You might make a lot of money with a squad like that.
Now we finish it off with the Phillies. It's a lot of young players, and then Ryan Howard. No takers. No one wants any part of that contract.
Yeah, $25 million this year, and then a $10 million buyout next year.
Oh, man.
Look at Philadelphia. They have 5 players making more than $4 million on your roster. Let's see. You got Ryan Howard, who really isn't quite the player that he once was, would you say? You have Matt Harrison, who's, spotty at best. Carlos Ruiz is, 37 now? You have Charlie Morton. I don't know if I want to pay him $8 million on a regular basis. Jeremy Hellickson, not a ton of upside. The starting pitching might be a little better than last year if, guys like Hellickson pan out. But, Philadelphia, they're spending money. Salary caps, they're at $77 million. So they're not paying nothing to nobody. They're just not paying the right amount to the right people.
That's the NL East, the AL East up next, and the play of the day on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today. Back on SportsBIT, Pauly and Teddy, AL East now. We start with the Blue Jays, their first division title last year in 22 years. They lose Price, but they have the most potent lineup in baseball. They get Tulo for a full season. He's been tearing it up in spring training. But, all this talk about the offense last year, Teddy, it was the defense that took them to another level.
Yeah, and that makes a team you want on the run line. With the teams that are likely to be chalk, I'm always looking for a squad. Is this a team I want to lay with? Can I lay 1.5 comfortably or not so much? And They have the lineup to blow teams out. They have a good defense to keep runs off the board because that's the worst. You know, you got a 5-1 lead and then somebody makes an error and next thing you know it's a 5-4 final and your run line bet just, you rip up that ticket. Powerful lineup, good defense, a bullpen with some upside. They were plus 21 units on the run line last year. That was number 3 in MLB. Wouldn't be surprised they're cashing run line tickets again in 2016.
All right, they won 78 games, but the Red Sox off a last place finish. Some horrible contracts. They have to depend on Hanley Ramirez and Sandoval. I mean, mixing a salad. Look at the front porch on that guy, that he's so overweight. They get Price from the Blue Jays, but maybe those smiles will go away when Price gets a look at the short porch in left field.
Oh, yeah, really. I don't know that this is necessarily the best ballpark for David Price, but we've seen lefty power pitchers have success here before. Obviously, the Red Sox have been around a long time, and they've had some good lefty power pitchers over the years, but I'm not convinced that Price is going to have the type of success in Boston that he's had, certainly that he had in Tampa Bay. But, and all of this, this is a team that's now finished in last place 3 times in the last 4 years. You know what happened 4 years ago, Paul?
World Series.
They broke up with Theo Epstein. That's what happened. Here's Chicago. Epstein goes to the Cubs. Look at the Cubs, man. That team's going to be contending for World Series.
Yep.
When under Theo Epstein, they went 839 and 619, winning 58% of their games. They went 34 and 23 in the playoffs. They won more than 90 games in all but 2 seasons. They had 2 World Series titles for a team that hadn't won one since 1918. Without him, bad contracts that are going to haunt them for years. Why? And remember, he was kind of forced out the door. It reminded me of like the Bulls after winning 6 titles. They're like, all right, we don't want you players anymore. Coach, Phil Jackson, Jordan, screw you guys. It's like, this guy brought you to the promised land. Pay him. Give him whatever he wants. One move that I did like Boston put together, Craig Kimbrell, 178 saves over the last 4 years. 15 blown saves, no more than 4 than any year, in any year during that span. That'll help. This bullpen might be good, might be real good. And Paul, as we're going to talk about with the Yankees, bullpens are sometimes undervalued commodities.
Yeah, I mean, this could be an historic bullpen. This could be Wetland and Rivera all over again. They get Chapman back once he serves a suspension. Maybe one injury away from being a 500 team. They're worried, can A-Rod do it again? What are you going to get at Teixeira and Beltran? But again, with this bullpen, once they get Chapman, it's going to be lights out. It could be if they get 6 strong innings out of a starter, it's over.
Yeah, and again, bullpens are probably the single most undervalued commodity in the MLB betting marketplace. The markets understand how to price starting pitching. Certainly by the beginning of May, after the season's got a month and they've got 5 or 6 starts from most guys, you're not going to find these crazy mismatches when it comes to pricing and starting pitching and how the markets respect it. But when it comes to bullpens, markets have no idea what to do with bullpens. They never have. I don't know they ever will. Oh, they can't handicap. Well, if you concentrate on betting on teams with good bullpens and betting against teams with bad bullpens, you probably make money. If you want to bet unders, bet on unders with teams with good bullpens and bet overs with teams with bad bullpens. You probably make some money. That being said, the Yankees were lined at 80 wins last year. They won 87 games. They weren't expected to be good. They were certainly a notch or 2 better than expected. And they still cost their backers money. That tells me that even after all these years, even after the market disrespect for the Yankees, they may not be the most properly valued commodity. They're not, a small market team that nobody pays attention to. They're a big market team that still attracts a fair bit of respect.
See if the Rays can surprise people again this year. Not a strong offense, but good pitching. And have we seen the best out of Longoria? Has he peaked, even though he's not that old?
Well, I mean, you look at the Rays, and especially if Longoria doesn't hit like he didn't last year, a lot of 3-2 games, 2-1s, 4-3s. Their pitching looks good. It looks really good. But the lineup is likely to struggle to hit their way out of a paper bag. So, maybe look at Tampa unders. Certainly Tampa unders at home have historically been a pretty darn good bet. But, this is one of those teams, Paul, and here's the truth of it. For whatever reason, I barely played on or against this team last year. Just didn't have a strong feel for them. And entering 2016, I feel the same way. I'm not like, there are a lot of situations where I'm looking to bet on or against Tampa coming in. You're not going to know every team like the back of your hand. It just doesn't work that way. And if you have a team you don't have a great read on, not that you ignore them, but you're certainly not going out of your way to find spots to bet on or against them.
This could be the last place team, the worst team in the AL East. Shaky rotation, question marks about the pitching staff, and they got a ton of guys who are all or nothing. There are going to be a lot of strikeouts as they have Davis. They pick up Alvarez. I don't know. Showalter's just going to sit back and wait for the 3-run home run.
I don't know, Paul. I'm not so fast there with Baltimore as the worst team in the AL East. Let's not forget, this team was number 1 in all of baseball in profitability in 2014. They were up 34.7 units. And to put that in perspective, Baltimore's up 34 units. The number 2 team's at 21. The number 3 team's at 10.6 in that year. They were way ahead of everybody. They were plus units in 2013. In 2012, they're number 2 in baseball, up 36.8 units. Last year, everything went wrong. They still finished 81-81, and they only cost their backers 3.5 units. Fade this team at your own peril. The advanced metric markets hate Baltimore, and yet Buck Showalter, this guy makes me money.
All right, let's go to the play of the day. Back to the NL East. Take it away, Teddy.
Oh, yeah, let's go to the Marlins. We talked about all the upside in Miami this season. And look at this picture. You got Danny Don and Bonds hanging out for you. But remember, Danny Don, he's okay in the regular season. You just don't want him in the playoffs. Same thing with Bonds. That Dusty Baker team with Bonds they should have won that World Series. That's all I'm going to say. Marlins over 79.5. A team with a lot of upside, a team with a lot of youth, a team with a lot of potential, and a team that may have some underrated pitching. This is a ticket. Again, you're not going to cash till October. We've been doing win totals all week for the play of the day. We'll continue again tomorrow, Paul.
You got it. And there'll be a big card to break down and recap in the NBA. And we'll do another division preview as well. Excellent job, Teddy. Tell your friends. We'll see you tomorrow on SportsBIT. Betting Insight today.